You ever have one of those days where everything feels off but you can't quite figure out why? That was me on April 1st. My best friend, Darren, and I had planned what we thought was a harmless April Fool's prank. We weren't kids anymore. I'm 22 and Darren's 23, but we still liked messing around for laughs. It was kind of our thing. Every year we tried to outdo ourselves. This time we wanted to make a video, maybe get some views online. You know, jump scares, dumb reactions, that kind of stuff. Darren found this creepy pig mask at a thrift store. It was old and cracked, and honestly, it looked like something straight out of a nightmare. He thought it was perfect. Our plan was simple. I'd wear the mask and jump out from behind bushes at people while he filmed from behind a tree or something. Nothing crazy, just some spooky fun. We picked Winslow Park, a quiet little place on the edge of town in Briar Hills. The kind of spot where people walk their dogs or go jogging. When we got there, it was almost empty. Just a few folks around. A couple walking their dog, a jogger with earbuds in, and one old guy in a long, dark coat walking slowly down the path by himself. "Let's get him," Darren whispered, pointing at the old man. I didn't love the idea. Something about him made me feel weird. But I went along with it anyway. I crouched behind a bush near a bend in the path, slipped on the mask, and waited. Darren hid behind a tree with his phone out, ready to record, and the man got closer. I jumped out and made this loud growling noise like the kind you'd hear in a zombie movie. I expected him to freak out, maybe stumble back or yell. But he didn't. He just stopped walking and stared at me. Not like a normal kind of stare either. His eyes were wide and glassy, and his mouth slowly stretched into the biggest, creepiest grin I've ever seen. It didn't look right, like his face was trying to smile but forgot how. I laughed nervously under the mask and backed up a bit. "Just a joke, man," I said. "April Fools." But he didn't laugh. He didn't say a word. He just took a step toward me. I stepped back. He stepped forward. It was slow, but something about it felt wrong. Like he was playing a game I didn't understand. My heart started beating faster. I looked over at Darren, expecting him to say something, but he just stood there behind the tree watching. Then, without a word, the old man turned and walked straight toward Darren. "Yo, chill out, man," Darren said, stepping out from behind the tree. "It's just a prank. No harm, all right?" The man didn't stop. "All right, back off, dude," Darren shouted. That's when the old man reached into his coat and pulled out something heavy-looking. It was a wooden club, thick and splintered like something out of an old horror movie. I swear it looked like it had dried blood on it. "Run, Darren," I yelled. But before he could even react, the man swung it. The sound it made, this sickening crack, froze me in place. Darren collapsed, and his phone hit the ground. He tried to crawl away, mumbling something I couldn't hear. But the man just brought the club down again, and again. I couldn't move. I wanted to. I wanted to scream, to help. But my legs felt like they weren't mine anymore. I've never felt fear like that before. Then the man turned his head and looked right at me. Still smiling, he started walking. Slow at first, then faster. Way faster than an old guy should be able to move. That's when my body finally listened. I ran. I didn't even think. I just bolted. The park that used to feel small now felt like a maze. The paths were twisting, endless. Every sound made me think he was right behind me. Footsteps, breathing, leaves crunching. I didn't stop running until I saw my apartment building down the street. I darted inside, slammed the door, and didn't wait for the elevator. I took the stairs 2 at a time and made it to my floor, heart thudding so loud I thought it might burst. I locked my door, pushed a chair against it, and stood there shaking. Then, the knocking started. It was soft at first, like he was tapping. Almost playfully, but it didn't stop. It got louder, more steady, not violent, just patient. He wanted me to know he was still there. My phone was dead. I couldn't call anyone. I banged on the wall, screamed for help. Some neighbors opened their doors, asking what was going on. I told them someone was trying to get in. One of them called the police. The knocking kept going. Harder now. Like he wasn't going to leave until he got what he came for. Then, all at once, it stopped. The silence was worse than the knocking. I stood there, barely breathing, afraid to look through the peephole. Every creak in the hallway felt like a warning. Every shadow outside my window looked like him. I waited, counting seconds, minutes. Nothing. When the police finally arrived, I opened the door. He was gone, just vanished. They went to the park and found Darren. He was already dead by the time I ran. They pulled the security footage from nearby cameras. What they saw was even worse than what I remembered. The man had been in the park long before we got there, just standing in the background, watching, waiting. We didn't pick him for our prank. He picked us. They never found him. No ID, no name, no fingerprints. It was like he didn't exist. Darren's funeral was small. His mom couldn't even look at me. I didn't blame her. I should have stopped it. I should have said something, but what could I say? That we got attacked by a smiling old man who disappeared into thin air? I moved out of Briar Hills after that. I don't go outside much anymore, especially at night. And every time I hear footsteps behind me or see someone smiling a little too long, I freeze, because sometimes I think he's still out there, waiting for someone else to prank the wrong person. You ever do something dumb just to get someone's attention? That was me last April. My name's Trina, and back then, I was stuck in a cold, quiet house in the middle of nowhere in a small town called Harlow Ridge. My husband Darren and I had been married for 4 years. He used to be sweet, couldn't keep his hands off me. Now, he barely looked up from his phone. That morning, I was doing the dishes from the night before. Darren was scarfing down cereal at the kitchen table, eyes locked on his screen like I didn't even exist. He didn't say good morning, didn't smile, didn't ask how I slept. I wiped my hands on a towel and stared at him, wondering where the man I married had gone. We used to laugh a lot, you know. Cuddle up on the couch, talk about our day, sneak kisses in the hallway. But now it was like I was invisible. I didn't think he was cheating or anything. Darren wasn't that kind of guy. We were high school sweethearts. Everyone, even my younger cousin Joy, used to say we were meant to be. I cleared my throat and tried to sound cheerful.
Hey, maybe come home early tonight. I could cook something nice, maybe light some candles. He let out this little laugh. Not a kind one either. More like I'd told a bad joke. Trina, I've got meetings all day, can't tonight.
Rain check, okay? Then he stood up, grabbed his bag, and walked out. Just like that. No hug, no kiss. Just a tired wave as he shut the door behind him. I leaned against the counter, feeling stupid. I'd quit my job last year to focus on our marriage. Thought it would bring us closer. Thought maybe if I had more time to take care of him, he'd feel loved again. But now, I just felt lonely. Around noon, my phone rang. It was Joy. Guess what? She said, laughing. Darren just asked me out to dinner. What? I froze. Then she shouted, April Fools. Very funny, Joy. Real mature. She snorted. Lighten up, Trina. It's just a joke. Anyway, I'm going out with someone tonight, so don't wait up. Love you. Bye. She hung up and I stood there, fuming. That's when an idea hit me. What if I turned the prank around? Not just for laughs, but to wake Darren up a little. Make him remember what he's got before it's too late. So I came up with a plan. I was going to pretend to leave him. I sat down and wrote this letter, full of fake sadness. I said I was tired, that I didn't feel loved anymore, and I was going to stay with my aunt for a week. I mentioned something about divorce just to scare him. Then I signed it and left it on the bed. I packed a suitcase, stuffed it with some clothes, and hid it up in the attic. After that, I turned off all the lights, tossed my lunch takeout wrappers in the neighbor's trash so he'd think I left earlier in the day and waited. The plan was simple. As soon as I heard his car in the driveway, I'd run into our bedroom closet and hide. Then I'd watch him read the letter, see how crushed he looked, and when I felt like he'd learned his lesson, I'd jump out and yell, April Fools! He might yell or call me crazy, but I figured we'd end the night laughing, maybe even kissing like old times. It was around 11 p.m. when I finally heard his car pull up. My heart started racing. I crept into the closet and shut the door gently behind me, peeking through a crack. The front door creaked open. "Trina?" he called. "Why are all the lights off?" I bit down on my lip to keep from giggling. He stepped into the bedroom, looked around, then spotted the letter on the bed. He picked it up, read it slowly. I watched his face drop, like someone had kicked the air out of him. Good, I thought. Maybe now he'd realize how distant he's been. He sat down hard on the bed. I almost felt bad. Almost. Then he pulled out his phone and called someone. "It's me," he said quietly. She left. "Yeah. We need to talk." Wait, what? Instead of calling me his wife, he called someone else. My heart started beating fast, but not from excitement anymore. I felt something cold slide down my spine. About 15 minutes later, I heard another car pull up. Then a voice, a woman's voice, drifted into the room. My stomach turned. And then Joy walked into our bedroom. Joy, my cousin, the same cousin, who just joked about Darren asking her out. She wrapped her arms around him like she belonged there. They started kissing, right there, in our bed. I froze. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't cry. I just watched them, hidden in the shadows, feeling like the floor had opened under me. They didn't even try to hide it. They fell onto the sheets, laughing and whispering about how relieved they were, how easy it had been, how Trina finally got the hint. I stayed in the closet for hours. My body ached. My mind felt like it had cracked. Around 3 a.m., Joy got up to use the bathroom. That's when I moved. Quiet as a ghost, I crawled out of the closet. The floor was cold under my feet. The hallway was dark, but I could see the bathroom light glowing. She was standing at the sink, washing her hands, humming to herself. I picked up one of Darren's ties from the bedroom chair. It was soft, dark green, his favorite one. I stepped into the bathroom and wrapped it around her neck before she could turn around. She gasped, her hands clawing at mine. I pressed harder. The tap kept running, muffling the sounds. Her eyes met mine in the mirror, and they were full of fear. Good. She dropped to the floor. I held on for a little longer just to be sure. I turned off the tap, wiped my hands, and walked back to the bedroom. Darren was still asleep. He never even noticed. As I stood over him, I realized I wasn't the one who needed a wake-up call. They were, and I gave them one they'd never forget. It was raining that day, one of those slow, steady drizzles that makes everything feel heavier. The cafeteria windows were fogged up, and the smell of wet shoes and fries filled the air. I was sitting alone at my usual spot, halfway through a large plate of fries, when Jared and Theo slid into the seats across from me. Jared leaned in and said, "Yo, did you hear about the crying woman out by the old tunnel?" I rolled my eyes and shoved another fry into my mouth. "Seriously? You expect me to fall for that? Tomorrow's April Fool's. I know you two are cooking up something." "No, for real," Jared said, raising his hands. "My cousin's friend saw her last night. Said she was just standing there, at the edge of the tunnel, soaked in the rain, pale as a ghost, no eyelids, no lips, just standing there crying." "Come on, man," I said, laughing a little. "That's the most made-up story I've ever heard." Theo didn't say anything, but the way he looked at Jared told me they were trying to set me up for something. I'd seen that look before. Jared grinned. "I bet you won't go out there and check it out yourself." "I don't have time for dumb pranks," I said, brushing him off. But of course, they kept pushing. "All right," Jared said after a second. "You go to the tunnel, record a short video, and if you make it back without crying like a baby, I'll buy you a full bucket of chicken nuggets." "Don't you mean if I make it back?" I joked. But deep down, I was already thinking about those nuggets, plus I wanted to prove they were full of it. "Deal," I said, grabbing my backpack. "You two head home. I'll go check it out." The rain had picked up by the time I left school. The sky was dull gray and everything smelled like wet earth and metal. I pulled my hoodie tight over my head and started walking toward the edge of town, where the trees got thicker and the houses started to disappear. The tunnel Jared was talking about used to be part of an old train route, some rusty line that stopped working decades ago. People said it used to carry coal from the mountains, but now it was just a forgotten, crumbling place that most folks avoided. I'd been near it once years ago with my uncle, when we were looking for wildflowers. Even back then, I remembered not liking the feel of that place. It was too quiet, like everything there was holding its breath. Anyway, I wasn't scared, at least not yet. By the time I reached the start of the trail, the rain had soaked my jeans and my shoes were squishing with every step. The woods were dark and muddy, and the air smelled thick with wet leaves and something sour, like something rotting. When I finally reached the tunnel, I paused for a second. It was bigger than I remembered. The entrance looked like a giant open mouth covered in vines and old branches. Water was dripping from the top, making a steady plinking sound against the stone floor. I pulled out my phone, turned on the flashlight, and hit record. "All right, Jared," I said into the camera. "Hope you're ready to pay up." I stepped inside. The light from my phone flickered a little, but I kept going. The tunnel wasn't that long, maybe 30 or 40 feet. I could see the other end just barely through the dark and rain. The walls were wet and covered in moss, and I could hear little splashes as raindrops hit tiny puddles. Bats hung from the ceiling, twitching as I passed underneath them. I tried not to look up. I walked slowly, talking to the camera, trying to sound brave even though my heart was thumping like crazy. "See? No creepy lady, just some old rocks and probably a few rats." I turned around to take a selfie, just for proof. That's when I heard something. A little shuffle, like feet dragging on gravel. I froze. "Probably a rat," I whispered to myself. I moved the flashlight toward the sound, but all I saw was a bat lying on the ground. At least I thought it was a bat until I saw that it had no head. Its wings twitched once, then stopped. There was a small puddle of blood underneath it. "Gruesome, huh?" The voice came from right behind me. I nearly dropped my phone. Spinning around, I found a man standing there. He was older, probably in his 40s, with wild hair and clothes that looked like he hadn't changed them in weeks. His face was twisted into a strange smile. "Didn't hear it coming, did you?" he said, his voice scratchy and slow. "Same as that bat." I tried to play it cool even though my hands were shaking. "You scared me, man. You always sneak up on people like that." He chuckled. "You didn't hear it, just like the bat didn't. That's how they get you." I forced a nervous laugh. "You're funny." He stopped smiling. Without saying another word, he walked over to the dead bat and stomped on it. "Better this way," he mumbled. My brain was screaming at me to run, but I'd watched enough horror movies to know how that usually ends. Instead, I tried to stay calm. "Well, I should probably head home now," I said. "My mom's expecting me." I started walking toward the exit, trying to look normal, like I wasn't about to have a heart attack. A few seconds later, I heard footsteps behind me. The man was walking right next to me now, so close our shoulders nearly touched. "What's there to explore here anyway?" he asked. I shrugged. "Just passing through." He kept walking with me, matching my pace exactly. I didn't dare stop. My throat was dry and I could feel sweat running down my back even though it was freezing inside that tunnel. "You sweat a lot," he said. "Or are you scared?" "No," I replied, trying to sound relaxed. "It's just hot in here." The end of the tunnel was just a few steps away. I could see the yellow glow of a distant streetlight outside. My heart raced. I was almost out. Almost safe. Then the man stopped walking and moved in front of me, blocking the exit. I stopped too. My whole body tensed. I didn't know whether to scream or stay silent. We locked eyes, and I swear I saw something wrong in his. Something hollow. He leaned close, his breath cold against my skin. "Don't end up like that bat, kiddo," he whispered. "I'll see you around." He slipped something wet and soft into my hand. I was too frozen to stop him. My fingers just closed around it like I didn't have a choice. Then he walked past me out into the rain and vanished into the trees. I didn't even look back. I ran all the way home, not stopping until I was on my porch, soaking wet and shaking like a leaf. Only then did I look down at my hand. Whatever he gave me was still there, heavy, cold, and slimy. I slowly opened my fingers. It was the severed head of the bat, and it was still warm.